Good morning, Maria.
Good morning. Good morning. And thank you for your service.
Thank you. And you're freezing up.
Am I freezing up? Oh, I think it's my possibly my internet is slowing down. Are you hearing me better now?
Yeah, we're doing fine now. Just you were. I got two words out of that one, but
Oh goodness. Okay. I said thank you for your service, sir. So Dave, so welcome to the show, and I'm really excited to have you. We connected on LinkedIn a while back, and we've talked about some of your services. But I'm so excited to get you to tell our viewers not only about your services, but also who you are and what was your entrepreneurial journey like. So that's the whole thing. So why don't we start with telling us about who you are? What are your values? What is it that's important to you, Dave Austin, the person?
well, that's a long, short story, I guess, in some ways.
I love
Well,
stories.
well, the journey started. I've been working basically since I was 12, 14 years old, and lied about my age and went to work washing dishes. And mostly on weekends, and I did that
Mhm.
for a number of years until I did some other things. So my journey started pretty young, and I was helping family when I was doing that.
Yeah.
And then I enlisted in the Marine Corps right out of high school. Back in those days, I knew I wasn't a candidate for college, and the draft was coming, so I enlisted. A lot of people,
Uh-huh.
why did you do that? And I enlisted. My family sent me my draft notice 2 weeks into boot camp, so I didn't beat them by much.
Oh wow. Wow.
And and I did 2 tours in Vietnam and did some other things, and then I was extremely lucky and got orders to OCS and became an officer and went to flight school. I was a helicopter pilot maintenance officer in the Marine Corps for many years, and on leaving the Marine Corps, um, did a few things, but mostly I got involved in aviation insurance. I was a underwriter in Los Angeles for probably one of the oldest and biggest company at the time, AAU, and fabulous job. But when my commute was getting to 4 hours a day, I
Oh
decided
my
I needed to do
god.
something different. And on a business trip to Las Vegas, one of my brokers made me a job offer, and I went, let me go home and talk. And went home and talked to the wife, and the next thing I know, I'm in Las Vegas. And um, trying to think how to say that. It didn't work out real well. Some of the people there were great, but uh, I didn't fit. So
Mm.
after about a year and a half, I left and I started my own agency from zero. I didn't have a single client.
Really?
That's that gets your attention. You learn a few things, and some of what I do and how I got into this business uh, stems from that. Cash flow is the big one, and I fought that battle until I grew the agency big enough to eventually sell it to a national company, and I worked
Mhm.
for them for a number of years, and finally I had 30 plus in the business, and there were some things internally that I said it's time, and I
Yeah.
walked away. The only regret I have is during that journey, I was fortunate to buy my own airplane and use my own airplane, and it was a good write
Love that.
off because it was aviation.
Yes.
When
You
I
were
got out of the business, it was hard to write it off, so the airplane had to go away.
yeah. It makes sense. But what a great story. I mean, Dave, you are, I think, one of the first ever veterans that are on my show. So your story is really beautiful. And again, like I said, thank you for your service. So you kind of insinuated into like what kind of motivated you to switch up from, the 4 hour drive and anything anything else that brought you to that realization where you were like you wanted what motivated you more than just the drive to start your own business, because I mean it takes something bigger, I feel like that could kind of draw you out to kind of like, hey, I want to start my business?
I guess mostly is I had worked for, well, like I say, AAU was a huge company.
Yeah.
When I started with them, I worked for some other uh, Fortune 10 companies, during that journey.
Uh-huh.
And
Yes.
at the time when I got out of the insurance business, that was just tired from one, and then, but
Right.
I didn't want to go back to corporate. And even
Understood.
in the
Yes.
insurance game, when I started my own agency, that wasn't corporate, that was me.
Right. Right.
I was a one man band, and I finally got a hell of a good assistant that lasted me, what, 6, 7 years. And,
Amazing.
but that was it. I didn't want that corporate structure, and even the limited structure when I sold the agency to the national company, that was grating on me, I guess, is the one. And when I left, I did a quickie. I got out, and what am I going to do? And I sat on my down for about a month, and I said, I got to go back to work. And I
I can
decided to
stay
get into
still.
real estate, commercial real estate, because of
Okay.
the economy here at the time. And I found a niche, boutique shop that would bring me on at my stage. We had 12 agents and 3 principals in August of '07. And in September of '08, we had 1 agent and 1 principal.
Mm.
And that's how I ended up in this business that I have now. One of the things I learned there was cost segregation,
Yes.
and I'm sure you're familiar with cost seg. Um, so I said, hey, that's not a bad thing to, look at. And I found 3 or 4 companies here locally that did it, but that's all they did.
Right.
And and then I found the company that I'm with. I'm a licensee for a national company, same as a franchise, but without all the paper. And at that time, we had cost seg and 5 other things that we could do for a business to save business money. And I went, that makes sense to me, And
Yeah.
then I looked at it from the standpoint of it's got to be easy to give money away. It
Yes.
is not easy at all. I'm amazed sometimes when I'll find, and I found some significant, about $500,000 in tax relief, and
Wow.
client doesn't want to go forward, and it's like, excuse me, what? Huh?
Okay, so this is great segue, by the way, because so I understand cost segregation study, in very general terms, because since my focus is not so much on taxes, but I still have a general idea of what it is. But for the sake of some of the business owners and entrepreneurs that may not have a good understanding of what you specifically do as cost segregation study, would you tell us in a simplified format, in simple terms, of what it entails, and how that is so helpful? Because, for example, someone who may not have reached, let's say, 1 million, 2 million, that you may not be able to save them all that much. So, like, if you can give us an overall of how you do this.
Okay. It's specific to cost seg. Um, Basically, I work with an engineer. Like you mentioned, I'm a licensee for a national company. They bring
Right.
the different vendors I work with, and each vendor they're pretty much the expert in what that service is. With
Got
cost seg, I use an engineering firm out of Michigan. There are 4 other tax programs within that one vendor, but cost
it. Understood.
segregation is simple. If you own a building, is it's being depreciated at 39 years. What we do is go in with engineering studies. I emphasize that for a reason, and take the pieces of the building out of that 39-year bucket and put it over in the personal side bucket with depreciation of 5, 7, or 10 years. So you're
Right.
accelerating the depreciation off that building. And it can be substantial. Like I said, I had a movie, multi-screen movie outfit in Idaho. We found $500,000 for those folks in tax
Wow.
relief. And then there are other tax, R and today, right now, R&D tax credits.
Guarantee. Yes.
WotC work opportunity, and the big one that, Jesus, it's even on the TV now all over, is ERC,
Mhm.
employee retention credits. Too many
Yes.
acronyms in my head.
I know.
Trying to figure them all out. But
Hence
those
why I'm
are
not
all,
on the tax side.
yeah. And the thing is from my side, and that's one of the issues, I think, and I don't understand why businesses don't take advantage of the different, there's federal, state, local taxes from the tax side that you can take. And at the same time, there are businesses like mine that can come in and find money. We're treasure hunters.
Right, right,
Uh,
right.
and and it's frustrating that businesses don't take advantage of that. And the vast
Absolutely.
majority of, well, in my case and with our company, we're not charging any fees up front. So if we
Right.
don't, it's a win-win. If we don't find a
Yes.
savings, you're not going to pay me.
Yeah. I mean, that means you're taking the liability of like the cost on yourself to find it. So you're doing the work before you even ask for the money. So that is a very unique, way of working. So I don't know why. What are some of the reasons that, let's say, business owners would say, like in that person's case, why would not they not want to take advantage of it if they could be, tax savings of $500,000 they can deduct for the following year.
Yeah, that one I didn't understand, and another one, a large one. I got to be real honest. I think it was a medical practice, and I think the practice manager may have been, well, she didn't want me in her books. I'll put it that way. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
and I think that's part of it. The other pushback is normally I need to be working. My avatar, if you will, is the CFO controller as a
Mm,
general rule, somebody at the
right.
C level. Um,
Yes. Because then
and,
they will really understand the value, I think, that you bring.
well, they do and they don't. The
Mm.
pushback is we're going to make them look bad in front of the ownership, management, whatever.
Oh,
And,
oh, you mean it's
and my
ego?
thing is, if I see it coming, it's like, stop, because I'm here to make you look good in front of them because you brought me here.
Right.
And the other
Right.
one that I get lately, and I just get tired of it, is because let me back out a little bit. What we do is, by terminology, a forensic audit on your
Hmm.
different services. It could be merchant fees, merchant
Right.
service fees, solid waste, utilities, a number of different, what do we got? They change them. I think we've got 6 other services that we're doing forensic audits on.
Right.
That's
You're
not
getting
the
into the
CFO
weeds.
controller's job or the CPA's job. Your job isn't looking at every invoice, every line item on an invoice.
Right. Exactly.
Your
And I
job
think
is to
that's where, yeah, that's
protect
where
the
I think most
taxes.
people get confused as to what a CPA, especially a tax CPA, is doing versus, let's say, our accountant is doing. There's a level of, high level review. We're not in there day to day to look at everything. And there's also a difference in, let's say, if you're paying, let's say, about the simplest form of, okay, let's say you're doing, bookkeeping and accounting services. It doesn't include any detailed work of going in and looking for savings. That's a next level service. And I think that's where the education part is missing, and hence why we are here talking about it.
Yeah, and that's the hardest part. And sometimes it's too good to be true. Well,
Mhm.
I have a problem with that one because I'm not charging them anything.
Right,
And I'm trying to think off the top of my head, any savings is coming directly from their vendor first. If I go
right.
in and do a merchant service audit,
Hmm.
the way that works, my vendor, the guy I work with, goes in. He's been in the business over 20 years. He has his own proprietary systems to look at those
Right.
invoices and find those added charges that you don't see. You might think you've got a
Yes.
2.0%
Yes.
fee, and if you take and divide out what you brought in that month and what went in the bank, you'll find out that's a 3.5, 4% fee because of the hidden charges.
Yes.
My guy goes in, finds those charges, we go negotiate with your vendor. We're not moving or changing anything. We're gonna go into your vendor and negotiate those fees, and we get it, and we do get them back. But you're going to get credited. You'll
Right.
get the credit, and then we're going to invoice behind it. So you're not even out of pocket for what we do, and that's every one of my services. It functions that way, with the exception of virtual payments, which is accounts payable automation. We'll actually pay
Mm-hmm.
you.
Yes.
There's no charges in setting up and automating your accounts payable. And with the virtual cards, we'll actually add revenue to the business. Same with
That's
our
amazing.
shipping company. Our shipping company, they're not physical shippers, they're software folks. And they are able to automate your shipping department. Again, there's no charges. There's enough built in on the back of it that we get paid. So there's no fees for that. And then one of the other big ones is EWA, earned wage access, same day pay. You're not going to pay us for that one either. That's a freebie, and it's a benefit for the employee. It's a hell of a benefit for most employees to be able to draw pay as they earn it.
Issues here.
You're frozen again. There you go.
Yes, I think I'm having some internet. I don't know. It's one thing is saying I have internet issues. The other one is saying it's not. I'm not sure. I apologize for this, but not in my hands technically.
It's hard to know what their question is.
I'm going to take this moment as a way to make sure. Dave?
Yes.
Do you hear me? Okay. Anyways, I don't know what's going on. Okay, so I'm gonna read out your information for those who are listening in. Guys, remember that Dave services are basic. Most of them are contingency basis. So unless they find savings, they won't be charging you anything. So please make sure to call Dave at 702-496-5291. I'm gonna call that number again, 702-496-5291. And I'm also gonna give you guys Dave's email. Hold on, I'm going to pull it up as well, just to make sure to those who want to write it down and watching. Email Dave which is dave@ncrs.co. CO, right, Dave? Did I make a mistake? No, it's correct. Yes. So it's dave@ncrs.co. Perfect.
Yeah, if somebody wants to give me 10 grand, I'll go buy the M from the Korean that owns it.
Yeah. Okay, sounds good.
Seriously.
Oh goodness. Yeah, I know sometimes they buy and then they just for the sake of reselling. Some people are in the business of buying domains and selling them, so that's what they do. So Dave, you kind of also, as we're talking about some of the services, what are the typical the correct client persona for you? I mean, I know there's different ones, but which ones are the ones that you are working with?
Okay, vendor or vertical wise, just about any vertical, any for-profit, non-profit, doesn't make a difference, because they all have services expenses that
Absolutely.
we look at. And
sure,
I guess if I put $1 on it, my minimum would be $2 million a year in revenue and up. Because at $2 million, I know I'll find something to save them money. I can go below that, yes, but it's better to go above it. I love the bigger companies. And some of the services, I mentioned merchant services and solid waste.
Right.
One of the big ones right now, and I got to be careful, is uniform rentals, laundry and linens. Mm-hmm. I thought merchant services was a dirty business, no pun intended, but laundry service, we're averaging 30% or better. We're seeing upwards of 50% in overcharges for laundry robots.
Wow.
That's across the country. My vendor works in the U.S. and Canada. He's been doing it for 22 years, and that's why we can find the savings. And it's amazing. My floor on that, I give, every one of my services has a different level. The level for
Sure.
laundry service, any business with $100,000 a year, we'll find at least 30%. I haven't seen below 30%. So
Oh,
that's
God.
a lot of money on the table.
That's a high percentage. That is a high percentage. That's great. That's great. That's amazing.
Merchant services, we're seeing 25%. So everything one thing is, and you actually alluded to it early, I make my living finding savings. So for me to go into a business and not find something, mom and pop, multi-level marketers, nothing wrong there. I can't help them. But an actual operating business, the vast majority of my merchant service guy in 6 months has been 100%. Every single business he's walked into, he has found a period. And the majority of our vendors will find a savings.
Yes.
I think the lowest one I know off the top of my head is auditing workers' comp insurance. We audit that. We go back 5 years on that. 77% of the time we'll find a savings.
That's amazing.
So for us to look at it, doesn't cost you anything. And the other thing is we do all the heavy lifting, literally. I mean, a work comp, you might over time, because that one takes a little while, give me an hour and a half total over months of your time. Usually it's a couple of phone calls and 2 pieces of paper as a rule.
Yes.
So we do, like automating AP. If we're automating an accounts payable company, just heard it the other, we do a lot of training on these services. Over a 4-month period, there were 4 phone calls. And I think the total time was 2 hours. And that was because our folks do all the input and and integration. That's the word I'm looking for.
That's amazing because I've been on the other side where when I was the CFO at my old employer, I had to do a lot of these things. We were a little bit smaller, like 5 to 6 million revenues, nonprofit, but I still had to look at it. And for me, the way I started getting the experience, I guess, from the time first I started as taking over some of these areas, was someone like you actually had reached out about the merchant services, right? And then they were very, very similar to what you said. It was like, a couple of meetings and the rest was like, provide me this. And then the next meeting was just like, 1 meeting to kind of talk about it, give him the information. And then next meeting is like, here's where the savings are going to be. Okay, what do we do to implement? So that's how I started seeing the benefits of these companies. Another one, which one was it that you had just mentioned? The automation. That takes a long time. And I recall at the time we were implementing that through our accounting software. I was overseeing it. But we had one person that was hired to do the work, but they didn't have a full team, and that thing was taking forever. And so I know exactly what you're saying when you say we're doing the heavy lifting, because not one controller or CFO of a company of however, 2 million or 20 million wants to spend more time managing the project and then having all of their normal day-to-day tasks that needs to be done on a timely basis to be taken away. So, and I used to be managing 3-4 departments, and that was like a very time consuming every week, 3 times. Like, it's like, check this, check that, check this. Is this working? I'm like, if I'm going to be doing all of this myself, like, I might as well implement it myself. So I know exactly what you're saying. So that's really
the other thing we provide. We have, dollar savings, but most of our services actually in the long run provide time savings for your employees.
The automation,
the automation side with like AP. And my company I use for AP automation, they're a $25 billion multinational company. They know what they're doing, and
I'm gonna guess
they're
it, but I'm not gonna say
ERP
anything.
agnostic. I mean, and that's why. And then our guys, your tech people aren't going to get involved at all, as a general rule.
Right,
But that's time. You're saving money. You're saving time. If you automate,
right,
automate any service, it's going to benefit
absolutely,
the business. Period. But
absolutely.
in
Creates
the case of
efficiencies.
AP, now those people can go do something else that's more productive for the business.
Absolutely. I agree with you totally. Okay, Dave. So like moving the conversation towards, more into entrepreneurship. Has there been anyone in your life that made a massive impact, throughout your life through your entrepreneurship? Maybe a guide or someone like that you can mention. Do a shout out.
Well, I do have one guy that I work with. He's a contemporary within the business out of California who's been a big help. His name just had a brain dead here. It's early in the
It's okay.
morning
It
for
happens.
me.
It happens. It happens.
Yeah, Neil Evans, great guy. But I think the one thing that I'd mention is I do have a business coach and I've used him now for right at 2 years, and that has been a tremendous benefit to me. Is having and
Yes.
corporate brought him in originally, and then I've just stayed with him. And Eric Lawfome is the gentleman's name. Uh,
Awesome.
Up until the new year, we were
Yes.
doing a 15-minute call every single morning, and I was on that call every single morning unless I had to be out. And then he has
Yes.
other training sessions that proteges that I work with and that I do with him, and some of his
Yeah.
specific training. But having a business coach or two or three, I think is imperative. It's made a big
Yes.
difference. It's made a huge
Yes.
difference having a coach.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely. And that's kind of how I ended up kind of retraining myself as well. Like I got myself a coach, because I realized I was stuck in certain areas. I could be doing controller and CFO work all day, but I didn't know how to actually grow my business when I first started. And I got my own coaches, and then I loved what they were doing, and I kind of saw myself being able to help more business owners that way too. And I recertified as a 10x coach. So yeah, and that's what I'm focusing on as well. So that's why the Profit Lab was created as a secondary business. So I appreciate you saying that, and I did not expect you were going to say that, but it truly is. It did impact me personally, and I realized, and I still have that as well. I go on my mentoring calls on a weekly basis. I have every other week coaching calls, which really help me stay on track, right? And that's the most important thing. Um, and other than that, so one of the other questions I usually ask Dave is, what are throughout your entrepreneurial journey, and you've had different businesses at different times throughout your entrepreneurial journey, what are some of the challenges that you had to face, and how did you overcome it?
well, for any entrepreneur business owner, you're going got to be a robocall at this hour. Excuse me, and I can't
It's
mute that one. We'll just do it that way. Sorry. Now I'm off track. Challenges. There were a lot of challenges, and just about every entrepreneur is going to fall into them. I mean, when I started my agency, that was probably the one that had the most challenges in it was cash flow.
Yes.
Dealing with the startup business cash flow. Indirectly, how I got into this business. Seeing other business owners, it made sense to me.
Right.
Uh, some of the other challenges is with an entrepreneur, you don't turn the computer off at night and walk out of the building and leave everything behind. It goes with you.
With you.
And you know that
Yes.
yourself.
Yes.
And that's the biggest challenge. And then you're going to have a rough week. And You still got to get up in the morning and you still have to perform. That there's no
Yeah.
shrugging it off or calling in sick or anything. You've got to, even when you are sick, you've got to
Yes.
still function, especially if you're,
Absolutely.
limited number of personnel. You know,
Right. Yeah.
and that's, I mean, in my case, I've had a couple of contractors that worked with me,
Yes.
pretty much just me. But then again, my behind me is a huge corporation with huge numbers of people.
Right. The teams. Yes.
So I don't have that issue anymore per se, but I still
Right.
have to get up and function. And that's sometimes that can be a big challenge, especially if you've had some adversities that day, that week, and you got to plug on. And, that's the biggest one. One
Yes.
of the things I learned from my coach, and the same thing, if you're looking at or starting a business, you need to have a good business plan for the business, a foundation.
Yes.
But then you need to have a 5-year, 10-year plan also as to how that business is going to function. And then the
Absolutely.
biggest one and the biggest takeaway for me um, is doing a business plan for this year. And I just did that. That was one of the things that, I got out of Eric, and sitting down, and it's setting goals, whether those be financial goals, whether those be
Right.
client goals, but
Right.
setting the goals, and then what worked last year, what didn't work last year, put that into the plan to fix those things. And
Absolutely.
what are you going to do to get to that goal? Whether it's client or money, how, is it
Yes.
leads? Is it, phone call, whatever that is, and it should be a 1-page plan. And it should be, I mean, I think with Eric, I think he max was 3 pages, but ideal is one. So you can sit and look at it. You can put it on your
Right.
desk, and
Right.
every morning, am I doing what I said I was going to do?
Right.
And it helps. It's a motivator. That's, I guess, what I'm looking for.
Right. No, I totally agree with you. I do that as well. Part of my, my coach, and mentor, Grant Cardone, that's what, I got into the habit of having the daily goals written down every day, repeated, because, and then when I look back sometimes, I'm like, 6 months down the road, sometimes, I just sometimes go turn it back like 6 months ago. What did I write? And what did I achieve since then? Because then because some days like you said, you're feeling down, or something may have happened. Like I recently had a loss in the family. I had other, family issues happening with my children, and like I could not focus. To help myself refocus, sometimes I have to do that. I have to come back. It's just, what were my goals? Let me get back on track, because you can't just fall apart. You take a break, but you got to come back. It's your bit in the life. So I look, I'm like, okay, this is what I didn't achieve yet. It's going to go on to, okay, when am I going to achieve it? So I love that you brought that up. I love that.
Yeah. And
That's
that's,
amazing.
one
Awesome.
of the things
Awesome.
of being an entrepreneur. And I think the guys that I've seen, and gals, that have made that choice to be, that's what they have behind them. That's what they've been doing. And they may have multiple businesses or have gone through multiple
Yes.
businesses. I've known a
Yes.
few guys that have started 5 and 6 businesses, and they were all successful. And
Right. And that's the
and you ask
differentiator.
them what they did and how they did it. And the other one is to have good people around you,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's immediately, within the business itself, or like in my case, the vendors that I work with, they're
Right.
the best at what they do. And
Yes.
that's where my comfort level is these folks. I have no problem introducing them to anyone as far as a business goes, because I know they're going to get treated right, and the job's going to get done properly.
Right.
And you're
Right.
frozen. There you
Absolutely.
go.
Absolutely, Dave. That is amazing. So you kind of brought me to my last question, which is, what are some of, three things that you can recommend to entrepreneurs as they start their journey? So you kind of mentioned having a coach is super, super important. What are two other things that you could say they should do to help them, for success?
Well, I already mentioned having a good business plan, the basic
Yes.
plan of the business, and then, what they're going to do 5 years and 10 years from now. My coach is out
Yeah.
25
A strategic
years on
plan.
his.
Yeah.
That'd
Yeah.
be, pretty much it.
I love
Trying to
that.
think. That's pretty, having a business plan, a coach. Um, I think that sums it up pretty well for me, anyway. And
No, perfect. It's perfect. It's just like, just going over, kind of in the full scheme of what we discussed, the three key things. So with that, did you want to talk a little bit? I mean, if you have time, just a quick note about the 22 Warriors Foundation that you are on the board of. Actually, you're the
yes.
co-founder.
Well, I'm the co-chairman.
Co-chairman. I'm sorry.
Co-founder. I was the gentleman that started Bill Email here in Las Vegas. He's a medically retired Army. I knew him from business, and I think I was his second phone call when he was starting it, and then eventually it evolved that I'm the co-chair. I don't do day-to-day. My whole function up pre-COVID was finding money for the organization. And what 22 Warriors is, we're a veteran suicide prevention organization. We do a number of different things in the community. One of my niche within the organization is providing service dogs for veterans. Right now I have 7 dogs working and trying to get some more. They're not cheap. The one thing we've found is 97% of veterans that have a dog do not commit suicide.
That's amazing
And so for me to provide that, my total time in the military was 32 years. So this is kind of my give back. I do several different volunteer things for veterans. That's how I got involved with 22. But that one's close to me, and especially providing the dogs. To see what it does to a person, to a veteran, is amazing. And that's also kind of what hooked me on it is, I think the first vet I met that had a dog, when he would tell his story, it would almost bring tears. And it's just, this one kid going from, I think it was 16 meds a day, hadn't been out his front door in 6-7 months, if my memory serves, a couple of years now. When he got his dog, not only did he go out the door, he got down to 3 meds.
Wow.
I started using him as a speaker. I brought him into a group.
That's amazing.
And I don't need to speak. The first time I did it to him, we were on stage in a pretty large venue, and I started talking about 22, and you could hear the front of the room kind of go down, and the back of the room was still doing their thing. And I did my spiel for 2 minutes, and I took the microphone I had, and I literally hit him in the chest with it because he didn't see it coming, and he had his dog with him. And I says, "Tell these people what that animal has done for you." And he told his whole. You could hear the room just go and listen to him. And because now amazing. It's coming from the heart, and
absolutely.
That's what really, I'd already been there, but that hooked me for sure to continue, provide these services for vets. And we do a number of other services, within the organization for veterans.
That's awesome. You guys are doing great work. It's basically saving lives. So if you haven't asked, you might as well ask now. For any listener out there that could be wanting to volunteer or help or do anything, please feel free to use this opportunity.
And if I can, and the thing is, especially with suicide, now, not just for veterans, but for everybody, and it has impacted me personally. There's a new 988, if my memory's right, that you can dial, and that's a lot of people still don't know about it. It doesn't get a lot of press, if you will, unfortunately. But suicide prevention is a big one. And, for veterans, that's my family. And
Yes.
so it's important to me. And, that's just kind of how you got me going.
We're getting to know the Dave, right from the beginning. We got to know all of Dave. So, well, I really enjoyed having you on the show, Dave. I really appreciate your time. Do you have any other last minute thoughts that you want to share before we wrap up the show?
Yeah, get rid of robocalls. Anyway, um, I'm trying to think. Just off the top. No, it's just I enjoy what I do. I enjoy helping businesses, and it's
Yeah.
frustrating. And you've mentioned it as well. It's frustrating when people don't want to take advantage of some of the services that are out there, and there are tons of
Yes.
services. I mean, you can reach out to me on a number of expense line items, but you can go to Google and find people that do what I do. One thing I will say, anybody that's doing basically what I do, auditing, do not pay an upfront fee. Never pay an upfront fee, ever. You know, because that is a scam as a general rule. I'm sorry.
Mm.
Yeah, no. That probably would be the biggest takeaway. Don't pay an upfront fee. No, the contingent model works just fine. And like I say, all our services, they're never going to be out of pocket. They'll literally have it might be microseconds, but they will have the savings before we do.
That's awesome. No, and I've actually seen it in works with other clients that have uh, taken advantage of others who do similar services as you, and in some cases it's millions of dollars. So I mean, if you're listening, don't waste an opportunity to at least, this is, you don't have to have an upfront fee. It's easy to invite, Dave over and say, hey, take a look, see if you can find me something. So it doesn't hurt. Worst case is like there's nothing there, and then everybody's happy. Everybody got to know a new person.
Well,
So
that's where it's a win-win. If we come in
yeah,
and don't find anything, then your vendor is treating you the way they should be treating you.
exactly,
You know,
exactly.
Unfortunately, the majority of the time, we're going to find something.
We're gonna find
And
something.
like you said, it ain't a lot of times. It's not chump change.
Yeah,
Like I mentioned, uniforms. If you're doing 100 grand or better, and we're saving 30%, that's thirty
correct.
thousand dollars. If you're
Back in your
doing,
pocket.
a million, that's $300,000 that's sitting on the table,
Yes.
and you don't know it. That's the other thing. You don't know what you don't know, and that's when bringing somebody in. I don't like saying it, an expert, but that's what I'm bringing to the table. I'm bringing
Right.
people. That's what they do for a living,
Right.
and you don't do that. You don't do it, Marie. Your CFO, doesn't do it. That's not their job. Their job is the macro. We're in the micro side of
Right.
the
Exactly.
equation.
Exactly. Yeah. And I've always appreciated working with vendors that could actually help me find stuff in the business, because there's no way, for example, for a CFO that's trying to run 5, 6 departments, making sure the reporting is correct and it's going to board meetings and all that. Like their day is already full. It's impossible to go into the micro area and pick apart pieces to see for savings. So I've always been appreciative, having vendors that would help me that way. So awesome, Dave. Well, it was so awesome to have you on the show. And to all our viewers and listeners, thank you so much for joining us today. Please remember to subscribe, follow, like, and share this content so that other entrepreneurs can learn as well. Let's empower each other through our experiences. And until the next episode, have a wonderful and blessed rest of your week.
It's been great. Thank you very much for having me.
You're welcome, Dave. Thank you.